Welcome to the Squint podcast. Today we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Martin Moore-Ede. He has been a leading expert on circadian clocks and the health impacts of light exposure at night for over 40 years. He was a professor for over 20 years at Harvard Medical School, where he led the team that located the suprachiasmatic nucleus, what is known as our brain's master clock, our body's natural pacemaker, which runs our wake and sleep cycles. He has published more than 180 scientific papers and 10 books on the physiology of the circadian system, interaction with environmental light, and the consequences of circadian disruption. His book, The Clocks That Time Us, Physiology of the Circadian Timing System, became the leading textbook in hundreds of college courses. And now he is welcoming his new book, The Light Doctor, Using Light to Boost Health, Improve Sleep, and Live Longer. At Squint, we love to get our light right, and the good news, the doctor is in. The Light Doctor is here today. We're so honored to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good. I'm delighted to join your broadcast, Shannon.
Wonderful. Can you just start us out just where you got started and how this became an inspiration for you?
Yes, absolutely. I originally I graduated out of medical school in England, and then I came over to North America to do a surgical internship, first year residency. And I found myself working these 36-hour long shifts, continuously on duty, off for 12 hours, back in for 36, 100 plus hours a week, walking around like a zombie half the time, as were all my colleagues. Nodding off in the operating room at inappropriate times, and writing prescriptions I couldn't make sense of the next day. And I got kind of interested in the natural patterns at that time of, that one could be extremely fatigued, and then one became alert again. How could that be without sleep? And so I got interested in the phenomena at that time of circadian rhythms. Now, this is a pretty new area. Rather few papers have been published in it when I got started. But along the way, I took a detour to do a PhD at Harvard Medical School, where I focused on, how these clocks worked in the body. And then joined the Harvard Medical School faculty, was there, as you mentioned, for 23 years. And, I had the fun, quite frankly, of being right at the very beginning. We were able to really answer some of the basic questions. Where is this clock in the human brain? Is it synchronized by light, and how does that work? And then what effects is it when the clock gets disrupted by artificial light at night? Because in the natural world, we live with our ancestors lived in broad daylight, sunlight during the day. They slept in the dark at night. And were quite frankly much healthier on a circadian aspect of health. Of course, there are other diseases that they hadn't conquered, but in the circadian health, they were much healthier. And so I got interested in that whole issue, and then that led me in time to address a problem that became apparent really around the year 2000, when the reports started coming out with a lot of evidence for increased breast cancer risk in women who worked at night, exposed to light at night, in women who slept with their bedroom lights on at night. And then, of course, it led to prostate cancer and all the rest of it. And when that all came out, I was advising industries on how to deal with their health and well-being and safety. And they kept on saying, what about the lights? What do we do about lights? And that got me in turn to start looking at what was the problem with light at night. And as we can talk more about, it turns out to be a rather narrow part of this blue part of the spectrum that's causing all the havoc. And if you engineer lights that do not have that blue at night, then you actually can remove a lot of the problems and still have useful light. So that's been my trajectory. We invented lights, and now, the inventions are there, the knowledge is there, the scientific community is in agreement, but the general public is quite unaware, and most of the lights sold today are quite frankly unhealthy, what I call junk light, because they're just these LEDs that pump out lots of blue light night and day, irrespective of the time of day.
Right. I do want to go back to the details of LED lights, but can we just explore some of the data on breast cancer in women in particular and shift workers at night? I mean, the data that I've seen, it's 50% increase in breast cancer rates for women that are shift workers. So women that are doctors, nurses. Is this true?
Yes, the basic studies were the first studies done around the year 2000, and at that time it was before LED lights existed. It was fluorescent lights, but they're also rich in blue. That were, and those sort of populations were working under fluorescent, blue-rich fluorescent lights. And that evidence came out from several major studies that came out with a range between 35 and 60% increase in people working at nights, in women who are working the night shift. Over the years, there's a lot more evidence now, so it's not just an associate. You always worry about studies that are simply an association, what other things could be going on. For example, we know that blind women who don't see light um, rarely get breast cancer. We know that women in parts of the world where it has not been electrified yet
Mhm.
rarely get breast cancer. We also know the pathways involved. In fact, a lot of detailed studies in animal models. So you can, for example, take human breast cancer tissue from a woman, implant it, after the biopsy, you can plant it into a rat, and that cancer will continue to grow in the rat. And whether it grows fast or slow depends on whether the lights are on at night and depends on whether how much blue there is in those lights. We also know that melatonin is really key because one of the key parts of this is the light coming in through your eyes. We probably should clarify this that light has two major functions. One is vision, and that's everyone's focused on. That's easy to understand. But there are also the non-visual aspects of light, which are sending the signal to the clock in the brain and then to the pineal gland, which produces melatonin, and then the melatonin sending signals to the body. And that whole system is totally disrupted by light at night, particularly blue-rich light at night. And what happens is the melatonin, which is key in suppressing cancer cells in the body, including breast cancer, is diminished. And so in these rat studies, you could show that human blood rich in melatonin, because it was taken from women sitting in the dark at night, would actually suppress the tumor in the rat. You could show that blood coming from women who were sitting in the with the lights on at night, and hence their melatonin levels were low, suppressed levels of melatonin, would allow the rat's cancer, human breast cancer on the rat to grow much faster. In other words, just a huge body of work. And
Mhm.
this led in turn for the World Health Organization to label light at night and people working shifts as a class 2 carcinogen. That was 2007. By 2020 odd, the National Institutes of Health and several other bodies came out with the recognition that yes, there is a clear risk between blue rich light exposure in the evenings and and cancer. So it's a pretty well substantiated area, and it's a pretty big effect. And it is still not on the radar of most people. In other words, I think one of the things that we're trying to do, and I think this podcast is a critical part of that, getting the word out, that this is a real issue, and that in fact, if you're concerned about your health, as you should be, anybody concerned with their health, should be worrying about what is the content of the light that they use in the evenings and at night.
Right.
And it relates to not just breast cancer. It is a wide range of issues now have been linked. Very big studies with 80,000 people in them have shown that the risks of psychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety is much higher in people who have the lights on at night.
Right.
That the cardiovascular disease, heart disease is higher. That diabetes rates are much higher. So it's a broad ill health issue. In other words, we're what we're concerned about at this time is modern medicine is great at fixing technical problems and treating technical problems. It is not really addressed some of the major causes. Now, I mean, smoking was a major cause that's been quite aggressively handled, but it took years before people realized that smoking and was in fact harmful and caused cancer. But now we've got to equally recognize that it's the light is a really key part of our health.
Right.
And, both short-term health as well as long-term health. In other words, not just a question of worrying about whether you'll get cancer 10 years from now. It's also what is your health today? And, one of the things we can discuss is how many people are now adopting a lifestyle where they get the right exposures to light. In other words, which basically is, getting access to sunlight, daylight in the morning hours in particular, getting outside, avoiding the use of blue rich light at night and sleeping in the dark. If you do just those things, you can have quite radical effects on your health and well-being.
That's incredible. And I worry too, just as a mother of, people in their 20s, and this is kind of the next generation of this modern living. And we have all this data about, I'll take breast cancer just as an example, but if you're looking at young people, women in their 20s, breast cancer is increasing 4% a year. I mean, it's staggeringly
Right.
aggressive.
Yeah.
And these people, I talk to women and they say, oh, I'll mention research about shift work and they say, oh, I'm not a shift worker. But if you're scrolling on your phone at night, that makes you a shift. I mean, it's the same effect, right?
An amazing number of people are sleeping with some lights on in the bedroom at night, whether it's a screen TV, whether it's the lights of the bedroom in general.
Right.
40%, the general population, 50, 60% of elderly people, and that's associated with doubling the risk of diabetes and other conditions, ill health problems.
Mhm.
But you're right. Yeah, what's really concerning is that the rate of cancer in young people is really accelerating. Age breast cancer is, colorectal cancer is. Those types of cancers are rapidly increasing in the number of new cases per year is climbing. It's not a question of um, the death rate. We're getting better at treating, so the death rates may not be so dramatic, but the number of people who get the cancer in the first place is really increasing significantly. Um, and so and a lot of it is found in those societies where there is the most intense electrification and bright lights, in the workplace, in the home. It's hard to get away from because, all there is in the stores are these bright LED lights. It's harder to find. There are solutions, but it is harder to find lights that can address this issue. So yes, no, it's a big issue, and we need to really pay attention to it in terms of, and it's we can talk about various things. Like for example, some people think just changing the color temperature. In other words, lights have got a label of a CCT or a Kelvin rating, and the harsher white lights might be up at 6,000 Kelvin. The more yellowy soft lights might be down at 2,700 Kelvin or 3,000 Kelvin. Unfortunately, that is not changing the blue content because it actually is the blue content that matters. It has a relatively less effect on blue content. So appearance of lights, and this is why it's so tough for the average person to sort of get their head around it. What you see as light, it's very hard to know what the composition of that light is without having a special device like a spectrophotometer, which will give you the distribution of wavelengths in the light. There are many, many different forms of white light. You can balance various colors to make white light. Some combinations are harmful and cause disease, and some combinations are preventive of disease. It's still white light. And so to the human eye, it's hard to tell the difference. So
Right.
that's part of understanding, making sure you're picking something that is low in blue content during the evening hours.
Yeah, I was surprised. I actually have a spectrometer and just doing comparisons of me outside versus even in front of a window. And I didn't realize in an effort to be energy efficient, these windows block so many important wavelengths of light we need to support our circadian rhythm.
That's absolutely right. And we've talked about the blue part of it, which is the signal that synchronizes the clock. But We know that many other parts of the spectrum are essential for health. For example, we know that infrared light or near infrared light, which is just invisible, as well as some of the red light at the far end of the red spectrum, are really very critical for health and for mitochondrial energy and for
Hmm.
putting energy into our cells, and for healing. And you can get much faster rates of healing if you treat um, people with red light or near infrared light. So there's a lot of new work going on in that area, and that is all blocked out by these modern energy efficient windows.
Right.
The other end of the spectrum, the ultraviolet light is rigorously blocked out, so none of it comes in. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, they block out some of the healthy violet when they're doing that as well. And we're now understanding that some of that violet light, the deep violet light, barely visible, may be quite critical for preventing myopia and short-sightedness in children, which is a really major growing problem.
Hmm.
And the fact that we use everything from the windows to our eyewear, eyewear's being coated so it doesn't let certain wavelengths through. All those things are leading us to have a rather artificial spectrum.
Right.
And the lights that we have, the LED lights, have a very narrow spectrum. They may have some blue, royal blue in them. They have very little of the circadian. They don't have much of the circadian blue in them, and then they have a lot of yellow and green and yellow wavelengths. Little red, no violet. It's a very narrow, artificial spectrum. That's why calling it artificial light is accurate. Some people say light is light, but actually it isn't. It matters on what it's there, so what's in it. And so full spectrum light is really also really critical to our health and having the broad range of wavelengths.
Right.
So yes, there's various parts of it. It's a fascinating area because we're learning more and more every day about what different wavelengths in the spectrum are doing. Green light is starting to be reused effectively for curing or preventing migraine pain and for calming down the amygdala. It has a reduction of stress effect. A whole number of things we're finding in that color, rainbow color spectrum
Hmm.
that we only see when the sun falls on water droplets in the sky, or you have a crystal and in a vase or something, and then you can see it on the wall. But we're normally not aware of that content of what's in light, and what's in light really matters.
Right. And so, as a fundamental routine for people every day, kind of this core basic health tenet would be to start your day with light, to get that morning sun. And in that morning sun is this blue, red, and green. And the blue we actually need. This is the good blue. We have these melanopsin, which are these blue light detectors, where we're designed to see blue, just not, the wrong light at the wrong time, as you say. So you just have to get the right blue at the right time, and that blue is in the morning, and that's what starts our day, starts our systems, and then at sunset we get the last of the blue. So that's why we should put the blue away or the artificial blue at sunset because we actually are disturbing our entire circadian rhythm at that time.
That's right. We're sending a signal to the brain that it's still daytime. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to be sending your body on the way to, if you're on the East Coast on the way to California, or if you're on California out to Hawaii or Japan, you don't want to be doing that with the light in the evening. And what happens is when people are exposed to light in the evening, particularly some people are more sensitive to others in it, but you can really lead to sleep being more disrupted. You can lead to delay in the melatonin as well as these ill health effects. So,
Right.
yes, I mean, the bottom line is, as you say, getting exposed to daylight, particularly in the morning hours. One of the interesting things is that the red light in the spectrum is really only most effective, clear effects in the morning hours. Same red light in the evening. You can treat people or a hive full of bees that's been affected by pesticides, and you can treat it with red light in the morning, and you will cure the problem. Cure the bees or cure the or help people's health in the morning. You have this effect. but the same light in the afternoon won't. So there's something rather important about getting out, getting exposed to the blue in the morning, which synchronizes your clocks, getting exposed to the red, as well as everything else. Not we don't understand all of it,
Mhm.
but we sure know that the natural spectrum is really the healthy thing, and
Right.
getting exposed to that as I did this morning, and I do every morning, getting out is absolutely critical. And then during the day, try to be near windows if you can. People who are, have an office with a window, picture window, sleep longer, 30 minutes or more longer than people who are in a cubicle in the back of the office without natural light. We know that the effects of light during the day is healthy. We also know that in the evenings you want to drop, really reduce the content of blue. So you want 20% of the light being blue in the morning, over 20%. You want less than 2% of the light, or as low as possible in the evening hours. And then when you get to bedtime, sleeping in the dark is critical because again, that is really has and allows the full restorative systems of the body to
Mhm.
snap into place and do their most effective work.
Right.
Whereas you've got a constant stressor if you have lights on in the bedroom. People do it because of anxiety
Mhm.
and so forth. But if you're going to have lights, have use yellow, orange, your red lights, but have them low to the floor so they're not really in your eyes, but just so you can move around safely. When you take your alarm clock, don't, for heaven's sake, get one with a white or bluish dial. Get one with a red dial.
Mhm.
Just remove those sources of blue light during the nighttime. So and do it all on a regular. The final core of this is to keep a regular schedule. People who live longest are those on the most regular schedules. And we know that this regime, and now big studies involving, 29,000 Swedish women, involving 88,000 British men and women, showing that people who get the most light exposure, outdoor light exposure during the day, live years longer. Their death rates are half the rate if you're already in your 60s or 70s. The rate of dying off is half that in people who get light outdoors. And similarly, people who have darkness are again living in night, are living longer than those who have the lights on at night. So it is a huge effect on life, healthy lifespan, and so forth. And it's, a lot of people are concerned about longevity and, all these, supplements you should be taking, and people get into crazy things. This is a pretty simple one, and it's
Right.
really well proven in studies involving tens of thousands of people.
Right. It's interesting too when you were talking about anxiety, people having anxiety at night, and it's ironic, right? Because, they're in front of their screens they're during the day, and then they're on their screens at night, and their cortisol is raising, and then they're having weight issues, and they're wondering where that's coming from because they're eating more at night, and they're not creating melatonin. And then they're not having restorative sleep because they can't recycle or repair their cells overnight, and then they wake up exhausted, debilitated, and asking what's wrong, and then they start another day and they don't go outside, and it's just kind of this, I call it, kind of cleaning your dishwasher. They never run their dishwasher in the morning. Their brain's dirty, their guts dirty, their heart's dirty, and they can't kind of figure out that it may be a lot simpler than we thought.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I've talked to so many people over the years, and people keep on telling me, doctor, I actually tried this out, and I feel so much better getting myself on a regular schedule, not stay up late with the lights on, blaring at night, and getting on that regular schedule, sleeping in the dark, getting out in the mornings. Oh my gosh, I radically feel the effect. It's not just something esoteric or a minor effect. It's a pretty major effect on feeling of health and well-being.
Mhm.
Um, so if you're not doing it already, try it is the message. It really is something to be, put work your schedule around.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, it's important stuff. And what I say, as I say in my book, The Light Doctor, the light you see is important to your health as the food you eat, the water you drink, and the air you breathe.
Right.
And that is really true. And yet we focus much more on food and water sometimes than we do on what we drink than on the light. So this is really one that can be addressed and can be fixed.
Well, it is interesting, I think, too, is because people associate the wrong kind of blue light with sleep. And it is associated with sleep, but it's associated with so much more. It's basically your circadian rhythm drives your overall health. It drives whether you're going to get cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, whatever it is. And it seems like such a basic concept to have bright days and dark nights, but the impact is so profound.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and I think one of the things, if you start reading some of the scientific literature on sleep, you can get yourself confused because people make the point, well, sleep onset is not much affected by how much blue light in the evening. The answer is sleep onset is determined by lots of things. But what is really disrupted is the quality of the sleep, the quality of your health, and everything else. So basically, it's a pretty it's well established now, in so many ways that this is a key route to health.
can you share in chapter two, there's like, it's either the Milky Way or some, can you share that story of your research?
Yeah, well, the basically we used to have in the ancient world before artificial electric lights. People had an incredible panoply in the sky of the Milky Way. You could see the stars, incredible. You could see thousands, tens of thousands of stars in the sky and the planets with the naked eye. And we just do not see that today because there's so much outdoor light pollution. And that is a big issue. Now, when you get in the difference between indoors, we've been talking largely about indoors, in the first part of our conversation, there we're in our homes and we're really concerned with our species, i.e. human beings in the space. And our homes are designed to protect and nurture human beings. But when we get into the outside world and start using light, we're also affecting millions and millions of other species. And that artificial light has devastating effects on wildlife. It affects the food webs that are so critical to survival. It affects the growth of plants and then the growth of insects. The birds feed on, affects the birds and their ability, affects the predators that live off the birds, the whole story, and you can do it in the oceans too. But essentially, what we've done by adding more and more outdoor light is that we are creating a very dangerous world that is decimating species. So, the number of songbirds has dropped by 90%.
Mm.
Um, since we started putting extensive outdoor lighting. Um, and that is really having very broad effects on the species, and that's why it's just a very big effect we're having with that. Um, and also birds are disoriented, they fly into buildings, all sorts of things are occurring just because we're using excess amounts of light. And what we've done is make light very cheap. One of the things the LED technology has done is make it accessible and cheap. And people think, well, it's cheap, let's add more of it in, let's light up our yards and our gardens and our public buildings and our streets to the point where, we're just having a huge negative effects. And, the glow of a major city can be seen from over 50 miles away in terms of light pollution. So it is a monumental problem that we're, affecting not just us, but the 8 or 9 million other species that exist on the planet.
It's true. And even at night, when, I talk about kind of everyday practical routines to help you get your light right. And even I watch, if you're watching TV at night and your dogs and your animals are there, that everyone's being affected by this
Right.
light and you don't realize it. And the other thing that I realized too is that I didn't realize how much artificial light I was exposed to just even around my home, whether it was garden lighting or tree lighting, which I've taken down. People come over to my house and they say it's so dark. I said, that's okay. It's on purpose. But you just don't realize how much light, and you're driving in a car and you get headlights and there's street lights and everyone wants to light up trees. It's not even the holidays and they're wrapping lights around trees. I mean, we're just drowning in LEDs.
Well, car headlights are a particular issue, right? In other words, they favor these very bright, harsh white lights. They seem to be concerned about the driver having visibility ahead of them, without realizing having enormous adverse effects on people, glare. And what you're doing is you rely when you're driving in the dark is some level of dark adaptation. Our eyes adapt to dark over time, and you can actually see what better in the dark after a while. But if you get these bright lights in your eyes, then your ability to see, the road ahead of you, you're affecting everybody else and their ability for their vision in adverse ways. So it's really got out of control, somehow or other. It's one of those things where the brighter the better. They seem to be pushing more and more of it out there.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, that's a big issue. And street lights has been a issue. How much do you really need to light up a street? Now we understand the safety issues of having some visibility on streets, but you can have huge health impacts, particularly if that light is not just directed on the street itself, but is shoots in all directions, which too often occurs into the people's windows. And so people living in areas where there are bright street lights have higher rates of cancer than people who don't. So you are really having effects on people just from the light coming in through the windows from street and outside outdoor lighting.
Right. And the mental health numbers too are, 30% greater, right? In
That's
these,
right.
which
Yeah, no, it's a huge issue, and I think the power of it is very interesting. I mean, for example, this whole story about we mentioned morning light has been critical, and one of the most interesting studies in that area, it's been repeated a couple of times, several times, is looking at patients admitted to psychiatric hospitals. They've got severe depression, severe anxiety, severe PTSD. And they're admitted to this hospital where it so happens that one side of the building, the rooms on one side of the building are facing south and east. And the rooms on the other side of the building are facing north and west. Well, the ones that are facing south and east get the morning sunlight coming in every day. They're exposed to that morning sunlight. Would you believe, and this is, shown several times, that the patients admitted to the rooms facing southeast, in other words, they're getting the morning sunlight, are discharged in half the time than the ones who are admitted to the northwest facing rooms that don't get the morning sunlight. Now, they're getting the same medications, treated by the same doctors, the same therapy, got the same conditions, everything's the same, except for that exposure to morning light. So it does show that key part. I mean, that's really pretty impressive stuff.
incredible.
Um, and make us realize, and of course, science goes through a circle, medicine goes through a circle. So at the turn of the century, there was a lot of emphasis about the healing powers of getting patients out in the sunlight in the morning, and they showed big effects on treating all sorts of conditions and people recovering faster exposed to morning sunlight. Um, so everything from jaundiced babies, where the jaundice is cured by the sunlight, to adults with all sorts of diseases. And that was a huge thing. And then we got lost somehow or other in modern medicine. And we build hospitals full of LED lights these days with not much in the way of incoming window light. And
Right.
so, that's part of the efficiency of building. The larger the building space is with the windows, the larger the interior space, the more efficient it is. And, the more harmful it is. So hospitals are one of the worst offenders. They've not yet, they need to be changing their lighting to what we call circadian lighting, i.e. lighting that is blue rich and red rich during the daytime and is depleted of the blue during the evening hours.
It is incredible when you look at historical photos of hospitals, and they used to have sun decks,
That's right.
and it's incredible. And now you go in and you're just surrounded. I mean, there's so many lights. And then these poor doctors and nurses that are sacrificing their health to be in this working environment.
Yeah. No, I think we've done a real disservice to ourselves, and a lot of it is in terms of a focus on energy. Why do we have these LED lights? Because there's been a focus on energy efficiency, and you kind of understand the logic in one way. You say, well, if we can do everything with more energy efficient ways, we're going to save the amount of greenhouse gases we produce and all the rest of it, and that will help in combating climate change, and so that okay, but I don't mind you having a more efficient air conditioner in your house or a more efficient heating system in your house, but lights only consume 6% of the electricity that your own home produces, only 6%. And you're messing with that by putting standards in now that force people to use harsher and bluer lights in their homes because they're a little more energy efficient. And that's now embedded in regulations. In fact, one of the things I've been campaigning on, and is to actually protect healthy light bulbs and healthy light fixtures from these regulations, because the fortunate problem is the healthy light fixtures that remove the blue at night or add infrared or give you a full spectrum cannot meet the new standards they've got in place that will go into effect in 2028. And 2028 is coming up pretty fast. Um,
Mm.
and we'll end up with just forced to be used these light bulbs. So we've put a petition into the Department of Energy, and you can find more about it at circadianlight.org.
Okay.
Um, and there you can see the petition, you can see what we're doing there, and you also can sign up to keep informed on it. But a petition to create a class of light bulbs, healthy light bulbs, that is protected from these energy regulations. And the sad thing about these energy regulations, they're only regulating the amount of harsh, bright white light that is really largely the yellow and the green part of the spectrum. And so they're focused on how efficiently can you pump out yellow and green light, not how healthy is the light. So this is a very important part of the whole mission is partly getting people educated about this, getting the light products available, but also protecting them from draconian regulations that are undermining health. Um, and really, we all believe in saving the health of the planet, but not at the cost of human health. And
For sure.
human health is a much bigger issue with these lights than any contribution we're going to make. I mean,
Mhm.
I think one of the salutary things there, we worry about saving electricity, the 6% of the energy produced by light bulbs. But every time we build a data center or an artificial intelligence, an AI center, we're actually consuming way, way more electricity than we ever save by harming ourselves with these blue-rich LED lights. So, yeah, we got to get a few things sorted out here.
That's amazing. Amazing what you're doing. And it is interesting, there is a cost to energy efficiency. And at what point are we willing to maybe be less efficient to be more healthy?
Right.
And it's a difficult time. I think, we're bombarded with kind of the doom and gloom. Is it
Yeah.
pesticides? Is it microplastics? But the real elephant in the room is light.
Absolutely. And we talked about my book, The Light Doctor, is available on Amazon
Yes.
and elsewhere.
Yes.
I really strongly recommend it to you. It really
It's
tells the whole story of this story and gives you the information you need. I also have a Substack column where on a biweekly basis, providing updates what's going on in this area. Um,
great.
and we're trying to, harness the energy behind today's political climate has changed a lot, but there is a new effort called Making America Healthy Again that's come out of the Trump administration. But in there, they have actually acknowledged that light is a key to health and that people should be having morning sunlight and should be having blue rich light removed in the evenings. And so we're going to cheer them on to that. Whatever else you may think about the recommendations they have.
Mhm. So just before I let you go, I want to get you out on time. So I'm all about checklists and daily to-dos for people because I think that health and health solutions can be very chaotic for people. And we are just bombarded with solutions that are about food and supplements and everything else, and not really enough about light. So I'm always looking for just, kind of our top three, our top five solutions on how you can make very small changes in your day to day that can make big impacts on your health. So if you were going to give your, top list for, I'm going to start with darkness at night. How do you make it pitch black? What do you do?
Well, what you want to do is make sure you're removing light sources in the room, not have screens on at night. Make sure if there are any light sources, they're in the deep orange or red end of it, but rather low in intensity. But basically that means darken the curtains or drapes that are really dark, or shades that really do block out light, because there's a lot of extraneous light, particularly if you live in a city, that needs to be blocked out. And it means that you pay attention to what are the sources of light in the bedroom. By all means, light a safe way to the bathroom and so forth, but at floor levels. But again, we're using very dim and very orangey or red lights. That's the darkness thing, and that will be make a big difference to the quality of your sleep. Um, Secondly, get out in the mornings. What matters is getting out really in the first half of the morning is the ideal time. You don't have to be excessive and get up at some people talk about getting up at sunset. If you did that every day, you'd probably shift your clock in the wrong direction, because we're very sensitive to light in the mornings. But get out in the early part of the morning for a walk, and get exposed to full day weather, whatever the weather. If it's a cloudy day, you still have a lot of natural light out there, much, much more than you ever have indoors. Um, and then, as I say, during the daytime, try to be near windows and get exposed to window light from windows. And during the evenings, then use lights that are called zero blue or blue free, or are there are different brands available now. More and more are coming onto the market. But they are lights that you can use. They can do things in the evening and see and have good vision and get tasks done, but not have this damaging effect of blue light at night. And then, as I say, adopt a regular bedtime, um, and that is really the core of the secret of dealing with this. Um, and it's really a very strong and powerful effect to keep your body really marching in step with the natural world outside.
Wonderful. Well, I highly recommend all our listeners to please purchase the Light Doctor. It's incredible. You will learn so much, and I am so honored that you were on the Squint podcast. It's just amazing to have you here. Thank you for all your knowledge and all your efforts and just making people more aware of the power of light in our health. And the wrong light at the wrong time can have a major impact negatively on your health. And we need to just not fearmonger, but we just need to be aware and make changes.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for spreading the word. This is an important conversation, and delighted to have a chance to have it with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yep. All set.
Well said. Good. All
Thank
right.
you so much. I really appreciate it.
When do you expect to get this out?
I'm hoping today is Tuesday. I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. Who should I talk to on your team about just cross promoting it so I can make sure? Because I haven't figured out what I'm going to do, but I'm probably going to do a little bit of promote the book and then
Right.
promote the podcast as well.
Yeah, well, Stephanie on my team does the all the media stuff, but you can send it through, send it through me, and I'll make sure she's in contact.
Okay,
But we have do all the social media, so we'll post our own things. We'll use snippets and clips out of your
great.
podcast.
Perfect.
Um, so just and if you give us the access to that material, then we'll do that, get the
Absolutely.
word out.
So I have someone that'll edit it and make it look nice, and hopefully
Yes,
it'll make your Instagram look nice too. And
right.
so it's incredible. I interviewed do you know Dr. Hamblin, Michael Hamblin?
Yes, yeah,
And I guess just as a layperson, I'm just astonished that this information is just not being
no,
I mean, nurses, I talk to nurses that are up. I mean, I'm in San Diego at UCSD. I mean, these nurses have no idea. They're all
right,
depressed. They
yeah,
all are having problems functioning. They all want to quit. And I have these
right,
conversations and they have no idea. I mean, there's OSHA. I mean, there should be an OSHA poster that says
right,
this is the environment. These are
right,
environmental hazards.
right. I agree with you. I mean, it's a real challenge, and but we're getting there. But it's the mainstream media is really not. I mean, they're so focused on diet and other things. They haven't quite got it either, and
Mhm.
it's just slightly frustrating. But anyway,
Right.
but we're getting there. We're getting
Good.
more and more people are getting the message. But
Good. Well, I look
a
forward to
conversation like ours really helps,
Good.
Janet.
Well, I look forward to promoting you and your book and getting the word out. Thank
Wonderful.
you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye bye.
Hope to talk soon.